great to be here. This panel is going to be in English, so bear with us, please. I'm very lucky today, not only to be here, thank you for the organizers for inviting me. I'm very lucky to be here with three impressive women that are having a great impact in different sectors. So it's gonna hopefully be a very, very interesting conversation. So we're gonna start by introducing ourselves. So I'm gonna start by me, just to get out of the way and let them introduce themselves. So I'm Federico Antoni. I'm managing partner of High Ventures, a venture capital fund based in Mexico City. And we invest in AI. Very excited to be here. Helena, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Helena Hasselmann. I'm the managing director of Stardust Equity, and I manage the alternative investment portfolio of a single family office based out of New York. We invest primarily in diverse managers and diverse founders.
I'm Sofía Elizondo. I'm a co-founder of a company called Brightseed, and we're based in Silicon Valley. We use artificial intelligence to find nature's molecules and identify those that can be helpful for health. And then we work with companies worldwide to make those into products that can get into consumers' hands.
Hello, my name is Manola. I'm the Minister of Economic Development of Mexico City, and my job is to convince bright people like Sofía to come and invest into Mexico City.
Oh, she's the one with the money.
Yeah. Talent.
Yeah, they today are the ones.
Yeah, but talent is rarer than money, believe me. Thank you for that. Well, let's start by talking about our topic today is about capital and allocation of capital, and may I say misallocation of capital in some cases. We as an asset, as a group, have been misallocating capital for decades now, right? There's half of the planet, half of the talent that is not getting nearly enough capital. So women entrepreneurs, women managers are not getting enough capital. And that is something that is definitely a big problem and a huge upside potential for the world. So let me start by asking you all, what have you seen in the past decade that has been quite a decade of ups and downs, particularly in this region? We had a boom in 2020 of venture capital, then we have a big correction, and now we are back into a boom with AI. So let's start with you, Helena. What have you been seeing? How do you see this misallocation that I just mentioned?
Sure. So I have been managing this portfolio for the last 8 years, so the larger part of the last decade. And I saw the VC boom really where capital was very abundant and speed mattered much more than discipline. At the same time, we had, at least in the US, several DEI mandates, so mandates around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which meant that female founders and fund managers were able to raise capital. That tide has completely reversed now. So we have seen capital going to female founders and fund managers drop to all-time lows. The correction has also meant that investors are valuing more capital efficiency, margins, proof points, and it's basically back to real economics and customer demand really driving capital allocation. But now we have AI, and what that means is that only a small fraction of venture funding is going to female-founded companies, which tend to not be in the more technical sectors, and that the market is tighter and it has become even more uneven. My hope is that because of the greater focus on fundamentals, women were always known to be more conservative in their business plans, more focus on margins and conservative growth. And my hope is that because of that, these companies are going to be standing out. But I do worry, again, like we were discussing just before the panel, that the extreme focus on AI will mean that, you know, women that are not in the more technical areas of business creation will be left behind.
How do you see it, Sofia?
So we are a company that's 9 years old, so we've also lived the last 10 years. We are actually incredibly lucky to have hit the funding cycles that you described. So many companies, and maybe companies that you all are working on, are amazing companies, great talent, great potential, good product, but don't hit the funding cycles if you receive venture and you die along the process. So I'm the first to acknowledge that we've been lucky in the timing of our fundraisers there.
So you didn't time it in purpose, it was just sheer luck.
There's too many things to try to get right than to also time fundraising.
Luck is a key ingredient for any entrepreneur and investor, Helena, I might say.
Great.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Sofia. Have you, I mean, you're a female entrepreneur. Obviously, you have a great background and great credentials. Do you see any changes in the attitudes of the people at the other side of the table towards women? Have you seen any change in the past few years?
Unfortunately, first to the, I actually benefited from a lot of change in the positive direction. I think there was a lot of emphasis and interest in different voices in leadership. Our board wanted to know what our kind of DEI metrics for the company were. And today, especially during the second Trump administration, all of that has been wiped out. No one wants to touch it, no one wants to get near it. And it obviously, unfortunately, lands as a big challenge for women, for other minorities in a leadership position, a position to fundraise. Because research shows, and you all should know this as you go out and look for capital, that men consistently, even with an unbiased, neutral investor, like Federico didn't say this, but High Ventures has 50% of their staff is female.
And co-led by a female partner.
Co-led by a female
partner.
Very important to have female responsibility at the very top.
Thank you.
They invest disproportionately in female-led companies. About 30% of their portfolio has female founders. However, women still get asked questions that tend towards conservative and risk aversion, while men get asked questions about potential and success. So watch out for that bias and always answer the question politely and then reframe it and say, yeah, we're going to mitigate this risk this way, and our potential is to grow there, because even the best intentioned, unbiased potential investor may not be asking you the question in a way that frames it towards success.
Very interesting. This public is amazing. Son increíbles. Aplauden increíbles. Manola, what's your perspective on the government side? So you obviously are in charge of making sure there's a lot of investment in Mexico City. How do you see the appetite? How do you see the gender bias in your work?
Well, the former panel gave us really encouraging numbers from one side and really sad numbers on the other side. As you know, less than 4% of companies are led by women in Mexico. Out of the OECD, we are the last country in terms of gender equality in business. But something happened a couple of years ago, less than 10 years ago, that there was this law that in order to be a political party, you have to have half of your candidates men and half of your candidates women. And the reaction has gone above every expectation. In less than 15 years, in less than 10 years, we have a women president, but not only that, half of the governors, half of all the mayors of the cities, half of all the places that you can challenge with a democratic competition is held by women.
Increíble.
And it's funny because if you remember the debate 15 or 20 years ago, they would say, we don't have women in power because they don't want to be in power, or we don't have women in power because they don't know. And suddenly we have more than 24,000 women that actually know and are in power. So sometimes we have seen that in countries like Mexico, quotas have a great impact. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that at the entrepreneurial level, and we haven't seen that at startups. And it's a sector that is replicating all the inequalities that has the traditional sector in that part. And in the second part, we are seeing that the technology is mostly focused on boosting consumption, and we believe that greatness comes from production, not from consumption. And it's really rare, for example, to have investments in terms of biotech or like hardware or manufacturing, and is more into boosting credit to really high rates. And we are trying to push that trend into.
And do you do it with a gender lens at the same time?
Not.
Do you do it thinking about more women being leading this wave? Is there something that you do, like choosing projects that are women-led? You have your own quotas in terms of developing this ecosystem?
Not only women-led, but technologies that will hire more women than men. And technology, because of the characteristics of the job, have a tendency to employ more men.
Yes.
For example, in health in Mexico, there are more women that work in health. So we can fund companies or we can help companies that are funded by women. And in Mexico, for example, biotech is more than 70% funded by women. And that they will employ more women because of the careers that they need. For us, is a win-win.
And that's indeed very encouraging. One of the features of this AI era is that it is now possible to solve problems in industries that were very difficult to work in. For example, education, healthcare. Those have been industries that both capital and entrepreneurs have been investing a lot in, and it was very hard, and we were very unsuccessful. With AI, those sectors are booming. And given the affinity of female entrepreneurs with those activities, we're seeing more female entrepreneurs, which is very, very encouraging. Do you want to comment on that, Helena?
Yeah, no, we have chosen from the beginning to invest in female founders and female managers and in overlooked sectors, because we feel that where you find compelling demographics and economics, you can't deny that you're going to find the commercial success and the outsized impact that we look for. So we have seen, especially in the recent years with AI, a lot of our healthcare investments, workforce upskilling have been tremendously transformed in a positive way by AI, and all of these sectors that have been largely ignored by VC because of the difficulty to make money, such as senior care, longevity, even climate adaptation, are quickly becoming interesting, but for the longest time they have been largely ignored by the industry.
That's super interesting. One of the challenges when some of you raise capital and understand this very, very well, but when you want to make an impact in an ecosystem, if you only affect a stage, so you invest at a certain stage, you still need the following stage to also deploy capital with that in mind. Is that a challenge? Is that something that you think about when investing? Will other investors come in and support this project?
When we invest like with that impact lens, that is something that we're looking for, but that doesn't mean that we're not looking for the economic sustainability as well. So for us, impact has to reinforce the business and vice versa. So I'm not so worried about finding another investor down the line that values the impact as much as I do, because the impact has to be inherent in the business model. So as the company grows, the more it grows, the more impact it's going to have. So the more commercial success it has, the more benefit it's going to bring to a certain population.
So you look for both?
I'm looking for both, and not one at the expense of the other.
Interesting. Increíble público. Sophie, could you tell us about that trade-off? Because as an entrepreneur, and I imagine you're thinking about this yourselves, you can either showcase your impact and focus on your impact, or focus on the financial potential that your company has. How do you balance that trade-off, and how were you able to do that in Brightseed?
It's a really good question, and for some reason, I'm not feeling particularly proud about what I'm about to share. But at Brightseed, we knew we had a really important impact. We have a really important impact on health, on preventable chronic disease, on looking to nature for the answers, on honoring ancient wisdom and ancient traditions. We knew we had so much impact, and yet we chose not to lead with that when we spoke to investors. We actually did not only not lead with it, we didn't talk about it barely at all. Because our investors are hardcore AI investors, life sciences investors, that are used to different kind of value modeling. And honestly, actually I had forgotten about this until this moment. In our Series B, we raised a lot of money. We've raised $100 million over the course of our 9-year history. And in our Series B, which is the third time we raised capital, I had to talk to my co-founders and our board and say, we need to make room for a female investor in this cap table, because we had no female investors in our cap table. But we led with fundamentals. We led with potential. We led with growth. We led with business metrics. And the investors who cared about it would circle around and understand the impact to nature, to health, to community. And those that didn't, fine by us, because to your point, Helena, as we grow, so will grow our impact. And sometimes you have to ride the wave of the ecosystem and the infrastructure that you're in order to have the impact that you want to have. And that was how we chose to navigate it.
And do you think that was a luxury because you were so successful and it was clear that you were going to be successful? Did you ever think, well, if things go wrong and we don't raise the next round, maybe we should turn and look for capital that is also valuing impact?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's actually a very smart strategic decision. When any one of you may be looking for capital, look for the pools of people that are interested in your project, and they may be very different. So we spoke with technology investors, we spoke with life sciences and pharmaceutical kind of investors, we spoke with food and health ingredient type of investors, and we kind of led with different things. We would have spoken to the impact investors how we needed to get there. But it's really valuable to understand who you're going to be speaking to, why they care, and how you can meet that thing that they care about in your project and in your story.
Yeah, I think that entrepreneurs often forget that they're in a selling process. And as any selling process, you have to understand who's on the other side, what are they looking for, what do they need. Go ahead, Helena.
I just wanted to add one comment, is that if the impact of a business requires subsidy, that's a different capital category, right? You're not looking for venture capital, you're not looking for investors, you're looking for potentially a grant or another form of capital. So I do understand that there is that, I guess, perception in the market around impact investing being a concessionary form of capital, but that's not what we practice. We're trying, like I said before, we're finding businesses where impact and the economics are compounding at the same time together.
Excellent. So you still need a sustainable business.
Exactly.
Even if you have a great impact.
Correct.
You still need to show that. And that's a great segue to what you're doing, Manola. When you design programs, how do you take into account the impact in the city and the attractiveness of a potential investment for private investors like Helena or me that would like to invest?
I totally agree. For us, to your comment, Helena, for us, impact is very different from philanthropy. For us, impact has to be like you do good while you do well. And for us, it's in terms of which sectors should we help. It's about the sector, not only about like what is specifically, like, if we have cheap cancer treatments, then you have the impact, you have the profits, and you have like the affordability for everyone. So what we are doing in the city is fostering a strategy where the sectors that could go in the city make sense, that it's feasible, that they can employ people from the city, that's also feasible. And in the third, that the products that we would produce are useful for the people. Like, we want technology that serves the people and not technology that gets served for the people, by the people, I don't know how you say it. And in that terms, it's like a switch from what we've seen in the technological spectrum from Mexico City, and trying to get these sectors, specifically advanced manufacturing and health sciences related. And with that, it looks really simple, but we need VCs that also get expertise in these areas and companies that come and build up from that, and that's what we are trying to do.
And successfully.
And successfully.
I have a question to you, Sofía. One of the things that the ecosystem often lacks is people like you. If you're seeing the news and you're seeing the rounds, and every time you see an entrepreneur that is successful, it's a man. And often in Mexico, it is a chilango, fresa, and hombre. That's basically the reference that we have in terms of entrepreneurs. How important is the role model in fostering female entrepreneurship and having like an impact of inspiring women in the ecosystem? How do you see that?
I think is hugely important. And also, I also want to make a distinction before I answer your question. Earlier today, we talked about Latasha, who is brown, who was here with Dominique Crenn, said, like, there may be a narrative about my country, the US. I am not that narrative. And so there may be a narrative about successful entrepreneurs, but just to clear the record, we were just talking about Canva. Who's the founder of Canva, and how much are they worth?
Yeah, so the biggest driver of value in our portfolio is a female founder who has already delivered over 15x our money.
And multi-billion-dollar public company. So there are many successful female entrepreneurs, and not all of them get picked up by the media. And I know that that was not the intention behind your question, but I think the role models is so important because we face challenges that many of our men peers don't face. And I can enumerate several of them that I have had to go through in my, almost 10-year tenure here. When we received our first check, our first term sheet, which is kind of the short version of the contract before they give you your first check, we were so excited. We were, my two co-founders and I, we pitched one of our investors who knew us from the past. They gave us $4 million, just like that, on a 12-page deck. And we were closing the agreement before the capital was wired, and I peed on a stick and I learned I was pregnant. And I was like, shit. And I was so nervous, and because I didn't have any role models. I couldn't call my peers and say, what did you do? How did you have this conversation with your first seed investor, right? With your co-founders. And it was terrifying and exhausting emotionally, in addition to physically, because anyone who has had to go through a first trimester, it freaking sucks. That would have been nice. And then fundraising in an environment of mostly men in a technical science, venture-backed company. I mean, that wasn't always easy. Not necessarily because the questions were complicated, because I could nail those, but because navigating those spaces was complex. I was either too charming or not charming enough. And it's something women, I see all the nods, like we navigate. And it would have been great to have peers that could help me navigate through that. And I ended up building that network, and it's so important that we invest in building that network because it took investment and it matters.
Right, so it's role models, it's mentors, and of course, if in front of you have a woman that is investing, she will understand what you're going through differently,
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Manola, how has it been in your career as a public servant? Even with these amazing trends that you discussed earlier, have you felt, in a way, the glass ceiling? Have you felt the Mexican machismo?
All the time, and I'm really young, so it's like double burden. I think that if we see the progress from 1 year to 1 year, it can be really disappointing. But I don't compare myself to myself. I compare myself to my grandmothers, and the change is just like huge. Like my grandmothers would see me with like, wow, you have the opportunity to work, or you have the opportunity to drive. Things that for me are so obvious, and for my grandmothers, they were from a particular context, were not able to drive. So when you see like the progress that we have done in the last half century, it's huge. Like there's a single paper that can tell us that we haven't progressed in terms of gender equality. That being said, patriarchy, it's very effective. It works because in a matter that how economy works and how the world works, someone needs to do the care business. Someone has to do it. And we haven't found until last year public ways to do it. So what my boss, Clara Brugada, she has been doing for the last 30 or 40 years is like, why does care has to be private and feminized and invisibilized? We have to make it public. So what we're doing in Mexico City is making care a public service. We have public laundry service that it's free. We have public healthcare. We have public daycare, but also we have senior daycare, of course, that is free. And that makes women have more time, of course, for work. But if you don't want to work, we have these houses where you can have a spa, or you can have your hair done, or your nails polished. And it's a way to take that burden from women, that someone has to do it, but not necessarily it has to be women that don't get paid. And that's what we're trying to do on that side.
Very cool. So we have a few minutes left. You're in front of dozens of decididas that have decided to build things with courage, either companies, art, initiatives. What are your advice for the decididas in front of us? And we will start with you, Helena. As they think of what they want to build next, what is your advice for them?
I'm going to speak from an investor perspective. So I'm talking to a lot of women that are pitching us for capital. And what tends to happen is that a lot of them over-index on the storytelling and under-index on the numbers, on their path to scale, to sustainability. So one of my advices is that you should really lead with that vision and that passion, but always back it up with the numbers, because in the end of the day, it's the economics that closes the round and closes a deal. Also, when you're in a meeting with an investor, as much as they're evaluating you, you're also evaluating them. So pick the right investors. Pick a female investor if you can. And make sure, are they aligned with your ambition? Are they going to be there to support you in the next stage of growth, or in the, other types of questions that we were just discussing? And, most importantly, that investor should be there to not only help you accelerate your company, but also they should not, dilute your conviction. So really pick someone that has your back in good times and bad times.
Oh my gosh, can you be my... Can you be my investor? We missed each other like 5 years ago.
I know.
This would have rocked. I think if for a day and a half we've heard like think really big, take the risks, and so I'm not going to underscore that, although I really believe it. I'm going to underscore something different that we have not talked about, which is really, really, really important. Lean into AI. I'm not kidding. AI will change the world in the way that internet changed the world for our generation. Do you remember life before the internet? Yeah, like we used to call people on the phone on the kitchen, right? So this will happen faster than you can imagine, faster than what the internet did. And it is going to create a huge divide between the people who know how to use the tools, are using the tools to get capitalized, and are designing the tools to include the people in the communities that matter to them. All of us. And if we are not comfortable with the new AI tools that are coming, that book chapter of the history of humanity is going to get written without us. So get over your awkwardness around what is AI? I don't know, I've never been a techie, I'm too old. Ask ChatGPT, how can I use you better? And Google, invest an hour a day in building a tool, learning how to vibe code, because we all can code now. And you will be surprised at the amount of opportunity that opens up, for you, for your enterprises, for your projects, and for the value that you will be able to create.
Great advice. Manola?
Well, I I take the two advices. I'm going to start learning AI.
Yes.
For me, I think that women, we have to learn and understand how the no, like N-O, works. And for me, it has two ways that we don't know how to use it properly, that men do, and that gives them a terrible advantage. How to take a no for an answer, it's only a no. It doesn't mean that you are stupid or that you can't do it or that it's a permanent no. It's only a temporary no, but you have to learn how to take it and also learn how to give no for an answer. We are socialized in a way that we are more likely to say yes. So we are the first to say yes to more work, yes to more responsibility, yes to all these petty tasks that we think that will help us. But it's actually the likelihood and the repetition of saying no's and taking no's that would give you a tremendous advantage compared to men.
That's great advice. Just to close the panel, this is the World Cup year, so I'm going to quote a football player, Chicharito, who said, imaginemos cosas chingonas. That's why I recommend. Thank you. No, Chicharito no. Pésima idea, perdón. Muchas gracias. Son un público increíble. Increíble. Gracias.